back to full recovery. So many of you have been so kind in expressing your thoughts about this channel, about these videos, and I want you to know I'm so grateful for your interaction. Many of you have asked about subscribing. How do I subscribe? If you will look at the bottom of this video right now that you're watching, you will see a highlighted word in red, and that word is subscribe. If you click on that and follow the directions, that will be beneficial to you. You won't have to check my Facebook page to find out if this has been posted. That video will be delivered directly to your inbox. If you have struggles with how to do that, I know many of you have never subscribed to a YouTube channel before. That's been expressed to me. And so if you have trouble figuring out how to do that, probably your best bet is to Google or ask somebody under the age of 25, and they will be able to tell you how to do that. But it is very simple, and it's something that will make it a little bit easier for you because it will be delivered directly to your inbox, and you can watch it at your leisure instead of counting on me posting it on Facebook as many of you are. I do appreciate that. And if forever you had to continue looking for my link on Facebook, I would be fine with that. But subscribing will make it a little bit easier for you. Today I want to talk to you about something that's been heavy on my heart during this time of quarantine and isolation, something that God has really impressed me during this time, impressed on my heart. For those of you who know our story, you know my husband became very ill 10 years ago. We nearly lost him. And some things that God has shown me throughout the last 10 years have been in the forefront of my mind during this time of isolation. And so I just want to share a thought about that with you today. I'm going to continue to do these videos every Tuesday and Friday. And initially we started this just to be a blessing during this time of quarantine, but so many of you have asked me to consider continuing, so we're praying about that. I can't guarantee that it will be this exact schedule or this amount of videos once everything is over, but I am praying about continuing to make these videos and pursue further content on this channel. I listened to the president last night unveil a plan for reopening the country, and it just proved to me after investigating social media this morning that boy, people can really hear different things in a situation like that. Personally, I was encouraged that our president is striving to reopen this country and get it moving again. Obviously, as a church member, a Christian and a church member, I want to get back to assembling in the way that we are accustomed to with our church family. I miss everyone so much and long for the day to be back together. Of course, we've worshiped together to the best of our ability over these last few weeks, but it sure will be nice to get back together and to be able to be with everyone. Some things I feel will never go back to how they were before. And in some instances, that's not a bad thing. I think we've had to elevate some areas of hygiene and cleanliness that were needed. And also taking care when we're ill to not go out and sometimes, you know, believe me, I understand that yeah, I don't feel well, but I still have to go to work or I still have responsibilities. But during this virus, this time of isolation, I hope that we've taken care to realize maybe there's some times I really just shouldn't be around people if I can help it. And I think that's a good thing. We've been made more aware of how that works and our part in spreading viruses. But I was encouraged to hear some of the things the president said last night, and I'm excited to think about the prospect of being able to open back up and especially where church is concerned. You know, there hasn't been a single church around the world that has been able to operate exactly as they did before this virus hit and before this pandemic. came into our society. And it's interesting to see how quickly we all adapted and found ways to meet. And no, I'm not comparing this to the difficulty Christians have in some communist countries around the world, trying to get creative with ways to meet. But I was encouraged to find that we as Christians are resilient, and we understand the importance of gathering, and we've all tried to do it in some way, in the way that we could. But it sure will be nice to be back together in a physical gathering, and I can't wait for that day. Let me encourage you. Things may not happen as quickly as you would like or as I would like, but don't let it wound your spirit. It's been a long time. It's been some difficult. There have been some difficult weeks here. Nothing has gone the way anyone wants it to go. But please protect your spirit during this time. Especially as women, and I am keenly aware that's the target audience of this channel. As women, we have a lot of power with that spirit. And you can be a Debbie Downer or a Bertha been through it and just squash everybody else's spirit in a matter of moments. And that's not fun for anybody, and it's not encouraging for anybody. Be uplifting. If you must say something to get it off your chest, we all have those times, we're all human. If you must say something, okay, but find a person to do that one-on-one that can take it from you, and that can help you. We just need to strengthen each other during this time. I fear that as the days go on and turn into months and years, even where we may have an adjusted lifestyle here, I fear that there will be a temptation to be down all the time. And let me encourage you with looking at history, the history of Christianity in this world. We have been resilient through difficult times. The time of Christ, that was a difficult circumstance, but in the end they rallied and they got the gospel to the world. And that leads me to talking with you about what's been on my heart in the last few weeks. As I mentioned, and as many of you know, my husband has been in a compromised state for the last 10 years. When he lost his left foot initially, that initial amputation, half of his left foot 10 years ago, the efforts that they went to spare his life were monumental, and because of that, it destroyed his immunity. And we have worked for several years on building his immunity, strengthening him, and God has really blessed those efforts, and he's still alive today because of some of those efforts that God turned the light on for us, and I'm grateful for that. But because of our situation, we've had times of isolation. We've had times of quarantine for his own health, or so that we didn't spread things to others. Or just he was recovering from a procedure, or my husband has had hundreds of treatments, procedures, things that have sidelined him from time to time. So during those times, I've always tried to pursue seeking what God was trying to show me personally through those times of isolation. So when this time of the pandemic hit, it was no different. And I began to ask God, what are you trying to show me through this time? And I have felt very much through the last 10 years, but especially through these last few weeks, like I was an arrow being pulled back in God's bow. My brother, who has had a lot of experience with bow hunting, tells me that that's called the draw, and pulling the arrow back all the way is called the full draw. And I have felt many times like I was in the full draw, like God has just pulled me back as far as he possibly could. During this pandemic, I have felt that Christianity and church on the whole has been pulled back as far as we could be pulled back in God's bow. And what that means is when that time of release comes, and only God knows when that's going to be, but when that time of full release comes, it means that an arrow that has been pulled back in that full draw is going to be launched a great distance. And it's going to go far. And I feel that as a Christian woman, I am no longer fighting that drawback, that full draw. I'm embracing that because I understand that when God is finally ready to let go and release, something big is coming. Something big is coming collectively for Christianity. Something big is coming for me personally. Something big is coming for you personally. And it's up to each of us individually to ask God, what is that? And it may be a million things. You know, God's plans are so high above us, above what we're capable of thinking or draw. We can't draw up these plans on our own. God's plans are so far removed from what we can fathom. But the chances are really good that God is weaving this tapestry and getting ready to launch us, and it's going to work together in ways that we can't comprehend, but ways that He can pull together His plan for the redemption of mankind. I began to take a look at Bible characters just a few weeks ago, going through their own pullback. People in the Bible that we know and love who had a time of isolation. Of course, Noah and his family on the ark, that time of being pulled back from everyone. Elijah under that juniper tree. Hagar and Ishmael out in the wilderness, and Hagar utters that verse that has become so special in my heart and life, "Thou God seest me." Job. Oh, what can we learn from the story of Job? Sitting in that ash heap all alone, having three of the best friends known to mankind until they just couldn't keep silent anymore. Even his own wife couldn't just bring herself to sit there in that ash heap with him during his time of isolation. But when God brought him out, what a victorious time in his life. I think of Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, in that prison. But then we got the book of Jeremiah from that. David in the cave of Adullam. And then so many of the Psalms have come from those times when David felt isolated. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, taking a stand for God in Babylon, away from, the chances are really great that they saw their parents being killed in front of their eyes and they were taken away to Babylon, but still rose to the occasion and came into full realization of what God had for them. Esther, finding herself in the palace, wondering, am I going to be queen? What's going to happen? Those times of preparation for her. And then she ended up saving her people. The Apostle Paul in jail, shipwreck, times of isolation. And goodness, we know him as the greatest apostle. John on the Isle of Patmos, my favorite Bible character, John. And what an amazing thing that God gave him. And we know that John, even in his isolation, he had church because he says, I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day. He still had church even though he couldn't gather with anybody else. Joseph, what an isolation Joseph endured in that prison unjustly. And then when he was brought out from that time and his arrow was launched, he saved his world. And of course, we take a look at the life of Jesus Christ, isolated from his Father down here on earth. And then that time of isolation on the cross. There isn't a person in history or a person in the future that will ever be able to comprehend the isolation Jesus endured on that cross. There were people that were tortured before Jesus. There were people hung on the cross with Jesus. But nobody has ever understood what it was like to take on the sins of the world, to give us forgiveness and bring us reconciliation with God. During this time, Isaiah chapter 64 has become very special to me. for many reasons. But I just want to read you one verse from Isaiah 64 today. And what a blessing it's been to me. Isaiah 64 and verse 4. For since the beginning of the world, men have not heard, nor perceived by the ear, neither hath the eye seen, O God, beside thee, what he hath prepared for him that waiteth for him. You know, while we're experiencing that full draw being drawn all the way back in God's bow, we don't know what God has planned. We can't even think of it. Our minds can't conceive what God may have planned for us when this whole time of isolation and quarantine is over. But I hope we'll take the time to earnestly seek him. You know, what he has planned for you is going to look different than what he has planned for me. One of the things I've learned along the way is that he wanted me to do this very thing. And I don't know where this is going to lead in the future, but this channel came through a time of isolation, being pulled back a little bit. I don't know what God has planned for us, but it's up to me to seek that truth, have a great spirit while I'm in pursuit of it, not dragging anybody down during this time. You know, I'm a firm believer in just not kicking people when they're down. And nobody needs to hear me say right now how heavy my heart is at the state of what's going on. There's enough people talking about that. What I wanted to leave with you today is God is in control. God has a plan. We may disagree with how our government is handling aspects of this pandemic, but I don't disagree with God's handling of this pandemic. He's in charge, he's in control, and he's going to take care of you and me. Hang in there with him. Keep looking up. Keep your eyes on Jesus Christ. He will never fail you. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back here on Tuesday. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.